This is a Radical Rant podcast. Hello everybody, welcome to the Hot Tag Podcast. Adam aka CSRadical here with you guys, and well, we're going to have a bunch to talk about. Obviously, NWA Power Episode 3, AEW Dark Episode 3, and AEW Dynamite Episode 4. But let's get into the big news stories that kind of start this day off. So, I love video games. I think it's been pretty obvious from my YouTube channel the way that I do end up talking about a lot about games, whether it's the VCR podcast with my friends, the soon-to-be returning Radical Rant podcast, which I plan on recording sometime this weekend. But when it comes to video games, I have not really given a shit about wrestling video games for a number of years now. I grew up playing the old N64 games, that being WrestleMania 2000, No Mercy, I think WWF Attitude was also one. I ended up really liking Here Comes the Pain, Just Bring It, like the PS2 ones. But once you get to the 360, PS3 era, and especially now with the PS4 and Xbox One era, it's not the same anymore. Games as a whole, when it comes to professional wrestling, have been very lackluster. I find that the 2K presentation of making it realistic has kind of taken the fun away from it. The last time I really invested myself in one was 2K17, and I probably spent more time just creating characters than I did actually playing the game, because at least the creative aspect allowed some room to work with. But when it comes to the gameplay itself, it's not that fun anymore. There's no interest to it. It's a lot of hitting over and over again just until you injure a body part enough that you can get a decent chance of getting a 3 count. You know, it's not... There's no chance of having squash matches. There's no chance of, just really pulling like a good quick like roll up. There's none of that. You have to just beat your opponent down over and over again until health is gone. And it kind of takes away the interest of the match. I mean, when you play the old games on the N64 version, once you get to your finisher, you might take their health down enough that that's it. But a lot of the times in the 2K games now, you get your finisher, it doesn't necessarily mean it's over because you probably haven't done enough damage yet. And it's just one of those things. So I haven't really been too big on the games. And now WWE 2K20 has been released. First time that they are releasing the series without Ukes, the guys who were responsible for the old N64 guys and have kind of been with the WWE franchise for a long time, as a part of the project. And this first game has been an absolute mess. I have obviously not played it, but I have seen more than a fair share of insane, just ridiculous bugs, horrible graphics. Somehow they downgraded, and the game has just been an absolute disaster. I think IGN gave it under a 5. I think it was like a 4.7 or something like that. It's been a nightmare. And if you're a wrestling fan, and this is the one real video game you have a crack at, because at this point we don't know what AEW is working on. I mean, there's Fire Pro Wrestling, but that's a very specific niche. Chikara has one. I haven't got a chance to try it yet. But realistically speaking, this is the mainstream video game, and it sucks, and it's a broken mess. So here is a list of some of the problems, for that matter, that the game have. And I'm taking this from an article from Multiplayer First. Every online game begins with maybe a minute of lag, and the game is almost a slideshow of like 5 frames a second. Ouch. In online tag matches, you get matched with one of your opponents as your partner instead of whoever was shown in your team in the online lobby. Teams in the lobby are decided by the order you joined. P1 and P2 versus P3 and P4, but in the actual match, it's P1 and P3 versus P2 and P4. There's now a countdown in the multiplayer lobby once it's filled, and you only have a limited time to pick your character. It isn't very long, so you have to basically decide on joining who you want to play, especially if you're trying to coordinate teams. And not to mention, when there's enough guys on the menu, it can also be a hassle like getting down and trying to figure where they are, unless you've memorized it. There are claims that the game's day one patch isn't out yet, despite the game being released for around 6 hours as of writing the article. This was posted, obviously, when the game came out, so I don't know what the status is on that. They removed the following features from online entrances. It skips right to the match. My career arenas, user-created arenas, the ability to edit match rules using custom matches that you saved. It seems various match modes aren't in the game anymore. Other features have been removed, like you can no longer control tag partners in single-player tag matches. The game can crash if you try and import custom attires on other wrestlers. Entrance music can play for the entire match in the first... this is a... brackets thing that was talking about the links. But yeah, entrance music can play through the entire match. I'm kind of like pre-reading this for the first time. I didn't have a lot of time to go through all of this. The prompt to get tagged in a tag match can appear when you're next to your opponent in their corner. Music is incorrectly labeled. You can upload images for stuff like custom logos, but you can't actually download them in-game. If you taunt the referee while it's supposed to be counting a pin, the ref freezes and stops counting. Any changes you make to existing wrestlers don't get shown in-game, like changing a wrestler's hair color. Button prompts not appearing properly. For example, they give here the counter button just doesn't show when you're about to get hit. Sometimes you get multiple versions of the wrestlers showing up. The game doesn't think you own the DLC characters when you try and download community creations for that character. Graphics aren't as impressive, as with some wrestlers looking much worse than their previous series versions, like I said earlier. Like there's one that shows like John Cena, and it looks like very obviously worse between this year and last year. There's another one with Bianca Belair where it shows the hair physics and how unbelievably bad it's gotten in this year. Let's see. There's stories of people being stuck in the same match with no way to progress. In brackets here, it says the worst I've heard is one person being stuck in there for 4.5 hours. If you add in logo on a My Player character for the My Career mode, the game will not load. Wrong audio effects being used when weapons are swung and hit. Targeting issues from the series hasn't been resolved and continue to make any multi-person match frustrating to play. Create a Belt isn't in the game at launch, but will be patched in later. The new-ish 24/7 title isn't in the game, and instead the game is the Hardcore title, which is the old version. And there's a bunch of issues from the franchise from years past that still aren't fixed in this year, so here's another list of them. Ref not counting pins, and also wrestlers flipping from prone to vertical instantly, winning a match without actually grabbing the objective. That's like if you're doing a ladder match and you go to grab the briefcase, but the briefcase actually doesn't clip off. There's still massive desyncing issues in multiplayer. Character creation can create some absolute monsters of various glitches, like stripping people of their faces. A lot of characters contorting, whether it's in certain moves and the arms like freak out or whatever. Gravity can no longer exist, so guys will just randomly like start floating in the air and things just don't work. And yeah, mostly stuff like that. Like the camera just sometimes doesn't follow and shit like that. And I mean, there's a lot of things. I've seen images here and there, especially when it comes to the graphic fidelity, and it's an absolute fucking joke. I am really disappointed that a company like 2K, who is already in enough shit with NBA, put something out of this quality. You could have just said, hey, we need a few more months to kind of spruce this up a little bit. It's still a little rough. But no, it's another money grab. Obviously, Seasons Pass and everything is happily in there, so you can pay whatever amount of money you want for stuff. That's fine. But the game itself is a broken mess. And it leads me to believe that the only way that this is going to get any better is if the AEW game is actually what they claim it's going to be, which is very much like the No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000 games from the N64. If they do that, you definitely have a shot at having a really good wrestling game again. Otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, wrestling games just aren't fun anymore, and they haven't been for a while for me. And to see that 2K20 is coming out now as a broken mess is just putting it up there in the same realm as games like Fallout 76, where not only is the game not that fun, but it's also impossible to play. So for 2K, Jesus Christ, guys, it shouldn't be that. Even just copy and paste everything and then just add new characters in. Like, do what fucking EA does with all their sports games. Come on. The other big announcement that we have here is that New Japan is actually going to launch a U.S. subsidiary of the company. So it's going to be called New Japan Pro Wrestling of America. They will be launching starting next month, so I don't know if this is like late November, if it's more in December, like we don't know. They haven't given an official date. They want to obviously grow a bigger footprint in the U.S., so they're looking at a bunch of different markets. They showed like this map where they had a bunch of cities that they were going to try to go through. So like they showed the West, which will have 6 cities across 4 states, the Mid, which will have 7 cities across 6 states, the Southeast, which will include 6 cities across 4 states, and the East, which will have 4 cities across 3 states. Texas gets 4 cities on its own, so clearly they seem to have an interest in Texas, which does make sense because the South is where wrestling is really at its best. The only other thing that they really kind of noted was the LA Dojo will have a full office environment now, so they will definitely be using that as more of a hub. And otherwise, they will continue their relationship with Access, and that U.S. tours will take place while the Japanese schedule is between tours. So I guess it's their way of being like, so if Japan is doing their run, like the house shows that you would see on New Japan World, you're not going to have them cross over with U.S. shows. So it seems like the U.S. shows will run in times that Japan is not running. So that way, if you're watching a New Japan World, there's nothing overlapping, so you're not going to miss anything. Now, I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, obviously, with AEW crossing over and you're seeing wrestling, starting to get a bit more traction. Not much, but a bit more. New Japan obviously looks at this as being, well, shit, we just suddenly became the number 3 company after AEW just launched onto the scene. So it makes sense. They have to play a bit of a card now to try to keep up. Realistically, I don't know what they can really do because now the talent pool is getting less and less. So unless they're using it as more of a young lion sort of establishment and being able to slowly work their way into becoming a bigger promotion, like maybe you start raising stars and you keep them over time in the same vein that you have all your young lions that you do in Japan. But if they're looking to compete right away, they're not going to be able to because there just isn't enough people to do it. All the big stars are either at this point in AEW or in WWE. I mean, even Impact's got a pretty good selection of guys too. So, I mean, I find it really hard to believe that you're going to be able to get a number of guys that can really tilt the tables in your favor. So at this point, I would hope that New Japan at least does a smart thing and just stick to, young lions and trying to be like developmental for the time being, and then try to work your way into getting stars so that the American brand doesn't need to take from the Japanese market or from your Japanese roster in order to get any sort of attention. Because we've seen on tours before when they hit like Dallas and places like that without the star power, people aren't as interested. If you don't have Okada and Ishii and Ibushi and Naito and all those guys, if they're not there, people aren't as interested. So hopefully, they do the smart thing, which is not try to overdo it right off the bat, because if they get people to assume that you're going to see Okada every time there's a show in the States, they're going to be disappointed. That's just how it is. So let's get on to the 3 shows. Right away, NWA Power, I am telling you right now, before I even get into it, I am dropping the show. And I'm very sad to do that. I'll explain more as we get to the end. So the show starts off with just your basic intro, and then Eddie Kingston just comes out of nowhere. Does his usual, yelling at stuff, and demands that he wants a tag match against the Dawsons with him and Homicide for interfering last week in their title match against Royce and Tom. I think it's Royce Grace and is it and Tom Latimer? No, Royce Isaacs and Tom Latimer. There we go. Pretty basic, nothing too special. First match on the card was Marty Bell against Crystal Rose. This was a very boring match and didn't surprise me at all because the last time I saw Marty Bell wrestling was easily the worst match of the Mae Young Classic in 2017. Crystal Rose was okay. I mean, she didn't impress me the same way that I've already forgotten her name, but the girl that had the mermaid tights from last week facing Allison Kay. She didn't impress me as much as that girl did. And like I said, this match was just boring as shit. And it already didn't help that I was looking to drop this because I've not really enjoyed the first 2 episodes as much as I'd like to. And this match did not do anything to really help with that. So that wasn't a great start. The Dawsons then come out to respond, say they will fight anybody, but they don't want to fight Kingston Homicide because they don't feel like they deserve that. We get a bit of a vignette for Thunder Rosa. Just basically a girl with tattoos and face paint, like cool, I guess. Aaron Stevens came out when Joe Galli was trying to call out Tim Storm for an interview. Aaron, for whatever reason, is wearing a medieval costume. I'm not sure why. I mean, he claims it's supposed to be for a pirate film. That's not what that looked like to me. So apparently he's wrestling the Dawsons tonight, which will confuse me later on as we go. He said he has a mystery partner. He also takes exception that Joe's asking about his partner and not about himself. He did do the no eye contact thing at the beginning as well. People just start chanting Captain Morgan at him. He does indulge them slightly by putting his foot up a little bit and posing, but it didn't really do much. He shows a little bit of quote-unquote B-roll of his film, which he calls Tropical Pirates. It's cheesy as all hell. It looked like the Pirates XXX porn movie actually had looked better than that, but I think that was on purpose. And he leaves saying that as an actor, he had more chops than Ric Flair, which, I mean, this is a slightly better promo than what he did the first time, but this just, I don't like what he's doing here, but granted, I won't be watching the show anymore, so I won't have to deal with it. We get our next match. We have Caleb Conley up against Dan Parker. Parker has Canadian trunks with a big fat maple leaf on his ass that says sorry on the back, so that's the most Canadian thing you can possibly get. This match was fine. I didn't mind this match at all. I wouldn't say like I overly enjoyed it, but it was okay. It was definitely passable. There was a little bit of high flying here and there, so there was some excitement. Parker actually did relatively well at playing the heel in that, but realistically speaking, I'm not too big on either guys. Conley, the couple of times I've seen him in the show, has been okay at best, but that's about it for that. There's an interview finally with Tim Storm. Storm kind of just, saying, he's like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do now. The one thing I was going for is now taken away from me. Sounds like he's looking to quit. Eli Drake interrupts. He gives Storm the whole, like, don't quit. Your name is up there with the Steamboats, the Flairs, the Races, the Fez, because you used to be the champion. Although, let's not forget that Rob Conway is also on that list. So, let's not pretend that the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship has always been a prestigious championship. So just because Tim Storm held it does not mean that he is now a prestigious wrestler. I mean, I don't mind the guy, but let's be honest here. He's not a Steamboat, Flair, Harley Racer, Lou Thesz. Like, come on. Then Drake offers him a spot to fight with him in the main event against the Dawsons. This didn't make any sense to me because I could have sworn Aaron Stevens said he had a mystery partner to face the Dawsons with. So, what happened? Did I miss something? But Tim just says he'll think about it, and he walked off. He got a little bit of a boo, which was strange. I guess people just being like, oh, he's being a pussy. I don't fucking know what they were going for there. There's a weird spiritual advisor hair cream commercial. Like, my literal notes for this say, what the actual fuck, and that's it. I can't explain that. I didn't know what the fuck was going on in that thing. That was just weird. Josephus comes out after that. He wants to apologize to James Storm after what happened the first week and shake his hand. Colt Cabana comes out instead, claiming to be James Storm. So again, with the comedy on the show that's supposed to be about grown men, that was a little bit weird. But Josephus kind of either plays along with it or he's that dumb that he doesn't know the difference. So he does shake his hand, doesn't let go, but eventually throws some powder at him, even though, again, it's not James Storm. So he starts beating up on Cabana, and then Storm comes out and last calls Josephus. Again. So makes him look like a motherfucking moron again. Although this time he goes to last call Cabana too, but Ken Anderson comes out and saves him. So that was weird. I don't know what they were trying to do here. Nick Aldis and Camille again with an interview. So this is now the point that I'm actually starting to get really annoyed with the show, because now this is 3 weeks in a row they're doing the checking on Camille stuff. Now I'm getting legitimately annoyed. And this is another part of why this show is starting to really bug me and made it really easy for me to want to drop this, because they don't stop. It's an hour. You can put this aside for one episode, come back the next week with it. But 2 weeks in a row since that main event, he's been trying to get the word from Camille. And again, she gets that chance and doesn't say a fucking thing. The only thing you get out of it in this interview is that Aldis says there isn't a clear front runner for his title. He calls Ricky Starks his first draft pick, says, in the future this guy might be a future world champion. He talks about guys like Eli Drake, James Storm, etc., etc. But again, like I said, there's no clear front runner. There's another random commercial for Who Is the Mark? Again, another weird thing that I'm just like, okay, I'm not... I would rather they just not do these, to be honest. I mean, granted, what does it matter? I'm not watching this anymore, but, I feel so weird watching the show and then these commercials that look like really shitty meme videos are just showing up. It's just bizarre to me. And then lastly, but not least, the main event, the Dawsons up against Eli Drake and Tim Storm. I was bored as fuck watching this match. I'm so sorry. I actually don't mind Eli Drake and Tim Storm, but this match sucked. This match was boring. I couldn't get into anything. The Dawsons actually upset the two of them with a power slam. They're, I guess, he holds the guy up, one of them runs into the other, and then the power slam, and that was it. They attack Storm after the match. That's when Kingston Homicide come out to make the save. And then the show ends with Nick Aldis coming out to check on Tim Storm after he was pretty much beaten to a bloody pulp. So... look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is a bad show. I would never dare do that because I'm not going to be the anti-Jim Cornette that goes up there and says, look at these guys. They're having these really, really old school short matches and guys are doing promos about being grown men. What the fuck is this? Why don't they understand what pro wrestling is? I'm not going to do that. I love me some corny, but the guy needs to fucking dial it back and understand that there's wrestling that isn't just his wrestling anymore. But, again, I won't tell you that NWA Power is a bad show. What I will tell you is that as somebody who is, fully deep dived into AEW, this show in NWA, unless you're looking for a retro 80s show that has studio wrestling, which is very bare bones wrestling, old school, not a lot of crazy stuff, not a lot of fun stuff, just straight up wrestling. If you're into that, then you can. But if you are like me right now, where your AEW is your thing, this is where it's at. NWA Power is not only not for you, but it's literally the antithesis of what you enjoy. And I think that I tried my ass off to really enjoy it. And the longer that I've watched this show, the more and more that I realize there is nothing about this show that gets my interest. There just isn't. So... I don't know if I'm going to replace this. I'm probably going to look at MLW Fusion when I have a chance. For the time being, I would expect next week it's just going to be AEW, that being Dark and Dynamite. But, who knows? Maybe we find a third show in there. But for the time being, NWA Power is definitely gone because I'm happy that there is an option for people. This just isn't my option. So... don't take this as I'm telling you this show sucks. I'm telling you that this is a show that just doesn't jive with what kind of wrestling I want to see right now. That is just all. It's not a terrible show. I can't sit here and tell you that it is the worst thing I've ever seen. But it's just not my thing. That's what it is. So anyway, AEW Dark. So we had only Excalibur and Taz on commentary. I really actually loved having him back. It was nice to hear an old voice from when I was watching, SmackDown back in the day when Heyman was still running it. And he actually did a relatively good job. He was really excited, having fun calling the matches. Seems like he was pretty knowledgeable what was going on. So all in all, this show was actually relatively good, although, the matches weren't nearly as big as, say, last week's was, for sure. So we opened up with Joey Janela up against Brandon Cutler. This was a very strange match because I felt like Brandon Cutler was supposed to be a good guy, but it seems like people were just booing him throughout the match. I'm not sure why. I mean, I thought they were trying to do the story of Cutler being the guy who's supposed to be all of us that, just wasn't supposed to make it. Maybe either that or maybe they just like Janela so much that, it just trumped it. And they just treated Cutler like he was the heel in this match. It was very strange to see him get boos. Because, I've seen people being like, oh, he's not that great. He's not ready for it. He's fine. Honestly, he's not the worst thing. Compared to... if you want to compare him to all the guys on the roster, well, yeah, he's one of the worst guys on the roster. But being one of the worst guys on the AEW roster right now is not the worst thing in the world if you're one of the guys. Because that's a pretty goddamn good roster. There weren't really anything notable in the match. Janela just beat Cutler with the Gotch Brainbuster, so Janela finally gets a win to his record. Excuse me, which he so desperately needs. I imagine that Cutler is going to be very much enhancement talent for a while. I imagine that probably in the next 6 months, you're going to have him continually fight guys and just never be able to pull it off. And maybe it leads all the way to like MJF, which is where it began, where MJF just keeps calling him a loser. Or maybe it's because Sammy Guevara. Actually, that probably makes more sense because Guevara takes shots at him all the time and being the elite. So maybe at some point, it obviously won't be at Full Gear, I would imagine, but maybe sometime in the next pay-per-view or maybe even just on TV that Cutler finally just snaps and wants a shot at Guevara. Probably comes up short there, keeps getting made fun of. Maybe eventually you lead to all the way to Double or Nothing when he finally overcomes things and starts going on a winning record. Who knows? But the match itself was fine. It wasn't too bad. We had another undesirable to undeniable. So we had QT Marshall, which is a backstage guy, used to be a wrestler. He wrestled for Ring of Honor a bunch. Apparently, his gimmick was that he ate apples, I guess. So he was trying to be Carlito without being Caribbean, I guess. I've never heard of the guy actually, so I was kind of surprised when they were like, "Oh, this guy was a Ring of Honor dude for a little while." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. How have I never heard of his name before?" But his career got fucked up because I can't remember, did he say he ruptured 2 discs in his neck or something like that? But he had to call it quits very early. He now works backstage doing a lot of the production work. But next week, I don't know if it's Dynamite or on Dark, but he is making his wrestling return. So that's a pretty cool story. Another guy who we see this a lot now in the wrestling industry where a lot of guys are actually coming back from injury because medical science is getting a little bit better and people are being able to rehab this stuff. So, I mean, we even hear rumors that like Edge might be coming back in wrestling. You never know. So I'll be curious to see what this guy does next week. And I'm looking forward to that because it's a nice story. It's really cool. I like that stuff. Next match we had was Nyla Rose going up against Leva Bates. I think it was pretty obvious what was going to happen here. Leva Bates was going to get destroyed, and yeah, she did. Before the match, Avalon came out with Bates, again, taking shots at sports stuff in Philly. Obviously taking shots at the Phillies because of Bryce Harper being there, and the Nationals are in the World Series now. But it gets to the point that Leva Bates actually shoots him, so that was weird. I don't know if that's going to turn into anything. But as the match goes in, throughout the match, Nyla just constantly hits power moves. Bates isn't really getting much offense. Nyla hits a Death Valley driver. Should have gotten the win, but Avalon distracts the ref. Bates cannot capitalize, though. Eventually, Nyla just tosses Leva Bates on top of Peter Avalon to take that out. Eventually wins with the Beast Bomb. Nothing too special here, but Nyla finally has a win on her record that isn't the Casino Battle Royale. The fans weren't really having much of this match. They weren't really booing. They were just kind of being quiet. I don't know if this was boredom. Maybe they were tired out because obviously this is after Dynamite was already put out live. But all in all, like the fans just really did not care much for this. We had a couple of promos leading up. SCU had a promo up again with the Lucha Brothers, which pretty much set in stone to me that you're going to see SCU and the Lucha Brothers in the final, which we will obviously get to shortly when we talk about Dynamite. And then Pac also had a brief promo setting up the match for him and Jon Moxley on Dynamite as well. Both were just your standard fine interviews, nothing too much to talk about there. The main event for AEW Dark was the Young Bucks, Cody and Dustin, up against Private Party and the Strong Hearts, that being Shima and T-Hawk. I got right at the beginning of the match, Cody does his entrance through the stage thing. I don't mind that Cody does this. However, I think he needs to stop doing it every time he makes an entrance. This needs to be a pay-per-view thing. It made sense on the first show. That was fine. But now he seems to do it every time. He even did it at Dynamite again, where all he was doing was coming out to cut a promo. It's like, guys, Cody, I get it. You got a bit of an ego because you finally proved that you were better than what WWE thought you were, I should say. But dude, you're supposed to be a babyface. Cut it out with the over-the-top entrances every week. Stop trying to channel your inner Triple H. We get it. You have an issue with WWE. You fucked up his throne with a sledgehammer in the first Double or Nothing show. We get it. Now fucking knock it off and go out there and kick ass in the ring, because we know you can do that. We know you can do that on the mic, so fucking stop with the gimmick shit. Let's get this stuff going and start taking it seriously, because I'm having a hard time taking you seriously, Cody, if all you're going to do is constantly draw attention to yourself from anything aside from your matches in the ring. So, moving into the match, there was a funny spot where Cody retreated for a sec. She got a kiss from Brandy, and then MJF was kind of giving him a weird look, just being like, oh, that's so gross. So he tried to fake kiss him, and MJF just like freaked the fuck out. MJF had a lot in this match, even though he had nothing to do with it. He was just on the outside, obviously being Cody's best friend, but he had a couple of fun spots in there. Another spot, Shima was trying to get a hold of Nick so that T-Hawk could get him a good chop, because T-Hawk is very well known for his heavy chops. And Nick and Shima kept constantly switching grapples. So, like, Shima would have Nick, and then Nick would get behind him, grapple him. So T-Hawk's like, fuck, I can't do anything. Shima would go around and hold Nick again. And they would do this for a couple of rounds until finally T-Hawk goes to chop Nick. Nick ducks out of the way, and he hits Shima instead. This was definitely a very silly match. This is what a dark match should be on a house show. It's all comedy. There's a lot of fun stuff into it. At one point, Cody takes a chop from T-Hawk, immediately gets out of the ring and jumps into the crowd to hide from it. At one point, Dustin starts power slamming everybody. He gets to, I think it was Isaiah Cassidy, after he gotten through the other three, and told Cassidy, dude, just give me a sec. As he like fake tries to catch his breath. Like I said, a lot of times MJF was getting involved and having fun with the match. Brandy eventually got involved at one point doing a senton from the apron or the top rope. I can't remember. MJF also getting involved in the ring, but he gets a backstabber from Shima. Eventually, there was a Private Party and Young Bucks standoff, calling back to their quarterfinal matchup on Dynamite, where Private Party upset them. They start doing the constant punching each other spot. The fans didn't really react as much. Maybe they were dead by this point. At one point, near the end of the match, we get Dustin and Cody trying to set up, I want to say it was Strong Hearts for Double Shattered Dreams. Private Party, assuming I got this right, Private Party comes to interrupt. Each of them, they miss their clotheslines or whatever they were going for, and then the Bucks double super kick one of them, and the Rose Brothers double super kick the other, and they set them all up for a quadruple Shattered Dreams. And eventually the match would end with Dustin hitting the final reckoning on T-Hawk for the win. So all in all, like, it was still a fine dark show. Again, you're getting this stuff for free, so it's kind of hard to be that upset with anything. Again, like, I really don't like Leva Bates. I think she is just not very good in the ring. Nyla definitely played a better role in the match that she did. But again, like, I still think Nyla is way too rough to be playing the monster character. And I don't mean rough as she's a tough girl. No, she's missing a lot of things and just not looking that great. She looks lost sometimes, that's all. But all in all, the show was still relatively good. The main event was really fun. It reminded me a lot of Bucks and Roppongi Vice matches in New Japan, where I was less interested in the wrestling and more having fun just watching the hijinks they were getting up to. So that was that. So lastly, let's go to AEW Dynamite. So we are at episode number 4. The ratings now tanked to under 1 million, which I figured was going to happen. World Series is now in full effect. Sports are definitely going to start taking over. My hope is that when the World Series dies, and it might even end before next Wednesday, because obviously the Nationals are already up 2-0. As of at least the time I'm recording, I don't know by the time if this comes up if Game 3 will have been played yet. But the series could actually end before Wednesday. So my hope is that basketball doesn't take too much away from AEW and that they can get themselves back over 1 million and start working on bringing in more people. But at this point, if they peter out at 900,000, that's still okay. If they start going even further down, that's when I start worrying, because it's less that the show is not good, because I don't think that's the problem. It's just that wrestling is not interesting to people, and at least not in the televised live market. I don't think that there is an issue with wrestling, because clearly when you look at the stands at AEW shows, they're doing just fine. They're selling out. The problem is that on live television, people are more and more less interested with wrestling. It just seems to be going that way. And I think it's just because all in all, people are not as interested in live television either. I mean, you're basically there to watch sports, news, and that's basically it. You look at the ratings Like, not counting the key demographics, because AEW is still finishing the top 5 on the key demos because they do really well in the 18 to 34 range. The problem is that number-wise, they're not doing nearly as much. Like, you see shows like the Rachel Maddow show, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, like, they're still doing 3+ million people. The problem is they're all people over the age of 50, so the key demographics for the states, they don't look at that as a big thing. You getting 2 million viewers in the 50+ market doesn't mean shit, because it's not a key demographic to the way that they calculate the ratings. But as a whole, I'm still not worried about how the ratings are going with AEW. I mean, I figured that the first show was going to drop a lot after that, because everybody wants to see what the action is, what the fuss is about. The idea that after 4 episodes now they've still kept it over 900,000 tells you that there is definitely a core market that's showing up. And you hope that if there is a further drop-off, it's going to be less because people are leaving the show so much as they just can't keep up with every episode. So anyways, first match on the card was the first of 2 semifinal matchups, this being the Lucha Brothers up against Private Party. This was one of the most fun matches I have ever seen, and one of the coolest looking matches I've ever seen. So many amazing spots in this match. I loved the Private Party Bucks match. This match might actually be better than it. Not in terms of overall story, but just as a fan, just watching the flurry of moves was just incredible. Phoenix and Mark Quinn owned the building tonight. So many cool moves, the various stomps they were doing, all the high-flying moves. The match was so fast for the first 10 minutes that you could tell that the Private Party guys were gassed. They were done. They couldn't hold up. The Lucha Brothers do this every day, so this is nothing to them, but Private Party obviously doing this on a weekly basis now, they were spent. You could see them slowing down towards the end, and I don't blame them because the amount of stuff they were doing was just unreal. As we get to the later parts of the match, because I mean, I could spend 10 minutes talking about the moves. What am I going to tell you though? Suicide dive, moonsault, shooting star, like I could do that all day, but I mean, it's not as interesting. But towards the end of the match, Phoenix went for that. I remember mentioning it. I think it was the quarterfinal match they had with Jurassic Express. It might have been the match previous to that with them. Phoenix, like last time, tried to like walk across the ropes and then do a running kick. And the last time he clearly missed. This time, at least from the camera angle, it looked like he nailed it. It looked perfect. So he hits that kick. They hit the stomp package pile driver, and then Phoenix runs outside and does a crazy suicide dive that he always does to end this. Takes out, I think, it was Isaiah Cassidy. He takes him out, and Pentagon pins Mark Quinn for the win. So it's going to be the Lucha Brothers in the finals. That was, like I said, fucking phenomenal match. Had a blast watching that. After that was the second semifinal, SCU up against the Dark Order. The crowd was a little bit dead for this throughout most of the match. I think it was because they were pretty worn out. It did not help that during the match, the Inner Circle came out. They took over a press box. Jericho being like, I got tickets. And, they're all there. The only person that wasn't there was Jake Hager. He was preparing for his Bellator fight, which I believe is this Saturday as I'm recording this. But yeah, the crowd was very distracted for a good chunk of time because they were all seeing what the Inner Circle was doing. They were chanting for Jericho and stuff like that. And that sucks because, again, it just adds more to the Dark Order just not being taken very well by the crowd. Because, again, I love these guys and they're very good in the ring. There was a spot that Grayson tried to pull off, and he barely managed to do it. He walked from the top rope onto the shoulders of Evil Uno and then on Scorpio Sky to Hurricane Rana, Frankie Kazarian. He didn't get all of it. He didn't really get the top of his shoulders. He kind of got him almost in the midsection, so it was a bit of a sloppy Hurricane Rana, but it still looked pretty nice in the journey up to. But in the end, SCU does manage to overcome it with what I can only describe as a double team GTS, where I believe it was Sky spun Grayson out, and Kazarian hit the knee, and they get the win. It was still a great match. In all things considered, it was a good match. It's just the problem is a lot gets taken away from it because the crowd wasn't as active, and they were also very distracted by the Inner Circle. And throughout the night, the camera keeps cutting to them because they're in the press box pretty much the entire night here. Same goes for the next match. So Kenny Omega goes up against Joey Janela. Same deal. A lot of shots with Jericho, especially because Kenny's involved now. This was a very solid match. I don't really have any too many notes for it. it's a standard Kenny match, and Kenny matches are what you expect them to be. They're hard hitting, pretty fast paced, a lot of stuff going on there. Same thing, like quick release dragon suplexes, all the like. The end of the match comes when Janela goes for a senton onto the apron. He misses. Kenny immediately throws him into the ring, does the V trigger into the ropes, and then hits the one wing angel. So Kenny finally getting into the win column again a little bit more after having some real struggles. I think this actually might be his first solo win that counts, because he had the one with Joey Janela on Dark, but it was unsanctioned, so it technically doesn't count. So I think this might actually be his first solo win. Oh wait, no, sorry, I'm thinking Heyman Page got the win on Shima. I'm trying to remember now. Did Omega get a win over Shima? Not that important at this point. 3 more matches to go, and this is the point where I lost my notes. I don't know what happened. I was watching this and had Discord handy when I was doing this, and for whatever reason, I don't know if I forgot to hit enter and save these things. But I will go with whatever I remember at this point, because I don't have enough time in my day to watch another the hour back. So we had the Young Bucks going up against the Best Friends in a consolation match between the two guys that got eliminated in the quarterfinals from the tournament. Pretty standard match again. Bucks and Best Friends kind of do their thing. At the beginning, before the match began, Orange Cassidy comes into the ring. He gives the Bucks his trademark super kicks, selling it really well. The Bucks then super kick him to Kingdom Come, and that pretty much gets rid of him. At one point, Chuck Taylor hits the Falcon Arrow. Everybody, if you are aware of PWG lore, no one ever kicks out of the Falcon Arrow. Excalibur made mention to that. He's done the deed. But unfortunately, I think it was Nick. He kicked out of the Falcon Arrow, and immediately both Chuck and Excalibur were like, no one kicks out of the Falcon Arrow. That was great. That was fantastic. I love that. It's been a while since I've had that callback. I was pretty happy seeing that. But the Bucks eventually pick up the win with the more bang for your buck. This is like a very solid tag match again. A lot of tag matches on this card, and all of them were fantastic. I can't really say too much else about the match. I'm so happy. Like, in retrospect, I even thought about it while I was watching the match. I'm so happy that every time I see Trent, I'm so happy to see how well he's doing on his own, because he was a nobody in WWE. He was just a guy that was with Kirk Hawkins. Never mind. That was Tyler Rex. No, Trent Barreto, I think, was with Ryder, wasn't he? I can't remember now. That's how long ago it was. But he was a nobody. He was nothing. And all of a sudden, he goes to, New Japan and kicks all kinds of ass there with Rocky Romero, starts working here in AEW, and he's just kicking so much ass with Chuck Taylor. I love these two guys. They're definitely over in the company, and it's so nice to see a guy like him do so well. Same goes for Taylor. I was a big fan of Chuck Taylor way back in the day with Chikara. That's where I saw a lot of his stuff. The grenade, the constant screams, him scaring the shit out of little kids, him trying to drown Archibald Peck with a artwork of a lake, like stuff like that. I love that. So yeah, it was great to see these guys doing well, and another really good tag match with obviously one of the better tag teams in the world right now, in the Young Bucks. Second last match on the card, Dr. Britt Baker with her homecoming to Britsburg, wearing the Steelers colors, had the Steelers Steelers version of her own logo on her entrance jacket. She goes up against Jamie Hayter, who I've never seen before. Saw that apparently she works in Stardom. I was curious about her at first when I saw her. I knew she must have been something interesting because they actually gave her a proper entrance. She looks pretty much almost like a Hot Topic girl, which is not the worst thing in the world. And I gotta tell you, by the end of this match, I actually became a fan of Jamie Hayter. And it just shows that Britt Baker is not over. I don't know what people see in her, but it's just not there. Britt still struggled in the match. There was a point where I don't know if this is just maybe like Hayter's already had a tooth missing, but Hayter at one point, like in the very, very early going of the match, like starts to scream, and I looked up and I'm like, is she missing a fucking tooth? Did the dentist knock a tooth out? Legit? I don't know if that was the case. I haven't seen anything on Reddit about people talking about it, so maybe I just didn't see something properly, or maybe it was a weird thing with the feed that I was watching on. I don't know. But Hayter got way over with me in this match. She was doing a great job healing things up. She fucking, in the commercial break, gave a wet willy to Britt Baker, and that's when I'm like, okay, I need to see more of this girl, because what the hell is this girl doing stuff like that? That's fun as shit. I love that. That's the kind of person that I watch in the ring going, I need to see that with Riho. Somebody who can bully her literally. That was interesting to me. But eventually, as expected, this isn't WWE. You don't lose in your hometown that often. Britt Baker does win with the lockjaw, which again, if she's going to do a move like that, she can't be a good guy. You can't be a good guy with a move that looks that painful. Like you're literally clutching like a mandible claw with a crossface at the same time. Like that can't be a face maneuver. But yeah, that's what I think about that. So last but not least, actually I missed this because I forgot about the promo. I can't remember where in the program this was now. Was it after the women? It was at some point. I've probably already passed the spot where this happened. But Cody came out. Now that I think about it, it might have actually been before the Bucks match. I think that might be where I got it. Cody comes out to address something, and he never actually addressed it. At least I don't think he did, because it made it sound like he was making an announcement and nothing came of it. Because Jericho and Santana Ortiz and Guevara were all blasting air horns to interrupt him. Finally, Cody was just like, you know what? This isn't the other company. I can get out of this ring and go up to the stands and beat the shit out of you right now. And Jericho reminds him that, it's 4-on-1. So Dustin comes out. So, well, whatever, it's 4-on-2. Then MJF comes out, and he's like, well, it's still 4-on-3. Take your chances. And I'm sitting there being like, well, the Bucks can still come out. Hangman Page can still come out. Kenny can come out if he still wants. No, Diamond Dallas Page comes out. That was interesting. That got the crowd moving. Great, always great to see DDP. So the four of them go out. Jericho locks the door to the press box behind him. So MJF gives Cody his scarf so Cody can wrap his hand in the scarf and punch the clearly very thin pane of glass out. It looks like he could have just used his boot at that point. It looks like he could have just thrown his shoe at the glass and it would have shattered. But they do that. They brawl into the press box. They brawl into the stands. They go into the concession area. And that must have been really cool for a bunch of fans that were unsuspecting. Eventually, the security gets the four faces out of there, including some police officers, while Jericho is sitting there half crying, being like, I got a ticket. It was a pretty nice brawl. That was fun to watch. So anyways, as I probably skipped over where it was supposed to be in the first place, the main event tonight was Pac versus Jon Moxley. This is a main event caliber match on a pay-per-view, and we got that on TV, which is fantastic. Now, this match, I had a feeling because they called the TV time every minute. Like, once it got to 5 minutes, they were constantly talking about it. I'm like, uh-oh. There's going to be a draw, isn't there? Because I realized how much time they had. At one point, Pac hits the Black Arrow. He takes a little bit too long to make the cover. Moxley kicks out. Moxley, same deal. Hits the Paradigm Shift. Just takes a little too long. And with about 10 seconds left, he makes the cover, and Pac manages to kick out, and we end with a draw. The fans didn't like that. I've seen people go back and forth on the issue. This is where I stand when it comes to draws. You need draws. Because if you're going to do the time limits legitimately, you need to have a few draws to make people think that every time the time limit is coming up that there's going to be one. Because if you end that first match that's about to go to a draw with a win, they'll expect that to happen every time. So what's going to happen at some point, a major match is going to take place. And in that match, it will be either a TV time limit or it will be a title match in the main event. And it will be a 30-minute time limit. Or a half-hour time limit. I doubt it'll be, or sorry, not a half hour. That is 30 minutes. An hour-long time limit. And we will get to the point where they say 5 minutes left. 4 minutes left. And the second you hear 4 minutes left, you're thinking, ah, shit. 3 minutes left. Fuck, they're going to do another draw? Really, on this match? 2 minutes left. I mean, this match has been great. Why would you ruin this one with a draw? It could have ended so succinctly. 1 minute left. Fuck, man. I can't believe this is doing it. Oh, he's hitting his finisher. There's 10 seconds left. There's no way he's going to get it. 5, 4. There's the 3 count. 1, 2, 3. And the crowd will pop for that. So to me, the draws make sense because in the case of Pac versus Moxley, for example, both these guys need to look good going into the pay-per-view. Although does Pac actually have a match? Is he facing Hangman maybe again? I'm not sure. I don't know if Pac actually has a match or not for Full Gear. But we know Moxley does for Kenny Omega. He needs to look good. And you're not really going to take the shine off of Pac either or Pac. I keep saying Pac because I keep thinking X-Pac. Pac, he needs to look good too because he needs to make the case that he should be getting a title shot. Now, I don't assume it's going to be anytime soon because I don't see Pac going up against Jericho. But who knows? Maybe Cody actually does win at Full Gear. I really don't think that's a great idea, but you never know. But that could happen. So a draw means both these guys still look good. It makes you believe that both of these guys are on an equal playing field so that if either guy goes into a big match, you take them seriously. But all in all, Dynamite was another good show. I was very happy with that, as I've been with every Dynamite so far. So can't complain. Pretty pleased with myself for taking up that show, and consistently can't wait for the next week either. So with that being said, guys, that's probably going to do it for here. I don't really have much else to go on this. So as per usual, if you are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. You can always share this video with your friends, not to mention leave comments below. If you're listening to this in audio version, if you have the ability to rate the podcast, please do so. If you can also, if there's an ability to leave comments, do that as well. And don't forget to share the podcast with all your wrestling friends as well. You can reach me on Twitter at CSRadical, Instagram at CS-Radical. And if you have any questions, comments, or anything you want to talk about in an email format, you can email me at askcsradical@gmail.com. There are also other podcasts going on the same stretch of like if you're looking at this on Spotify or any other place, I have several podcasts running. There is this one. There is an anime one called The Church of Weeb. I am looking to record a podcast for the Radical Rant podcast, which will be a different version of what I'm normally doing here. And then I also have my group podcast with my friends Vishal's Views and Jen and Chris called the VCR podcast, which you can also check out here on the YouTube channel if you're coming from that. Or if you want to hear the audio version, you can see what available platforms it is on anchor.fm/VCR podcasts. And if you're coming from YouTube looking to get the audio version of the Hot Tag or any of my other solo podcasts, you can reach that at anchor.fm/radical rants. So that being said, guys, thank you so much for either watching or listening to the show. And I will see you next week when we will either have just AEW shows or maybe we have MLW in there. Not too sure yet, but we will see when we get to that point. So once more, guys, thanks for watching or listening, and we will see you on the next edition.